You know how sometimes you just assume things about reality. What's real, what isn't.
The baseline assumptions we all operate on.
Right. But then sometimes you hear about something that just makes you stop and think, hang on a second.
Yeah, throws a wrench in the works, so to speak.
Exactly that space. That's where we're headed today. Looking into these often pretty bewildering accounts of encounters with, well, what people call non-human intelligences.
It's definitely a topic where things get blurry fast, ordinary, extraordinary. The lines just seem to dissolve.
They really do. And it forces you to question, well, everything you thought you knew. So to guide us through this really fascinating and sometimes, let's be honest, strange territory, we've done a deep dive into DW Pasulka's book, Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligences.
And it's important to say up front, this isn't just like a collection of spooky stories.
No, not at all. Pasulka is a professor of religious studies. She brings a real academic weight to this.
Which is crucial, isn't it? Because this topic often gets bogged down in sensationalism.
Totally. Her background's key. She studies belief systems, how people interpret extraordinary events.
And she's looked at some really diverse things, historically, too. Like her work on levitation experiences.
Yeah, even collaborating with the Vatican on that, apparently.
Right. So she's comfortable exploring these liminal spaces, these accounts that don't fit neatly into boxes. UAP religious phenomena.
It gives her this broad perspective that feels, I don't know, quite unique for this field.
Definitely. And she doesn't just sit in an ivory tower analyzing texts.
No, she's out there talking to people, the actual experiencers, as she calls them.
But also scientists, military folks, tech people.
Yeah, trying to understand the whole picture. How do these stories form? How do beliefs get shaped around experiences that are, well, hard to explain?
It's about the human processing of it all, isn't it? How we make sense of the inexplicable.
What narratives do we construct?
Exactly. What frameworks do we even have to make sense of it?
And the central idea in Encounters, the thing she puts right out there for you, is this possibility. This idea that humanity might be, I don't know, nearing some kind of contact.
Or at least a new understanding.
Yeah, contact with different kinds of non-human life. She connects it to our technology advancing so fast. And also this greater willingness now to actually listen to people's personal accounts.
And non-human intelligence for Pasulka is a really broad church, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's not just little green men in flying saucers, though that's in there.
Right. UFOs, UAP.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
But also things like angels, spiritual beings, more traditional religious ideas almost.
And then she brings in artificial intelligence, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and even stranger stuff like dreams, visions, synchronicities.
These weird coincidences that feel meaningful.
Right. And even the idea of other dimensions potentially playing a role. It's a huge scope.
She really doesn't shy away from what she calls the preternatural high strangeness, the woo factor, you might say.
Yeah, the woo. She leans right into it.
Instead of trying to sanitize it or explain it away immediately.
Exactly. She seems to think that weirdness, that illogical quality, that might actually be important data.
Like if you ignore the strangeness, you might be missing the point entirely.
That's the feeling I got. Like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, you lose something vital.
And to help think about all this strangeness, she uses some really useful conceptual tools. Plato's allegory of the cave comes up quite a bit.
Yeah, the cave. That's a classic. So for anyone listening who might not remember.
Go for it. It's a good one to recap.
Okay, so Plato imagines these people chained in a cave, facing a wall their entire lives. Behind them, there's a fire, and things pass in front of it, casting shadows on the wall. That's all they see. That's their reality.
Just the shadows.
Right. Now imagine one prisoner gets free, leaves the cave, sees the actual world, the sun, trees, real objects.
Mind blown, basically.
Totally. But then if they go back into the cave and try to explain the real world to the others...
They'd sound crazy.
Exactly. The others would think they'd lost it because it's so far beyond the shadow reality they know.
And Pasulka uses that metaphor really effectively, I think.
How so? Specifically for these encounters?
Well, the shadows are like our everyday consensus reality. What our senses and current science tell us.
Okay. Limited.
Potentially, yeah. And the person escaping the cave is like the experiencer. They've glimpsed something more, something outside the normal framework.
Something beyond the shadows.
Right. And then they face the same problem. How do you describe the sun to someone who's only ever known shadows? People are skeptical. They don't believe it.
So Pasulka's kind of asking, Are we the ones staring at shadows when it comes to NHI? Is our framework just too limited?
That's the provocative question she raises with it. Yeah. It really highlights the limits of perception and, crucially, communication.
And how hard it is to talk about things outside our shared, agreed-upon reality.
Which ties directly into how consciousness and belief systems shape our interpretations.
Right, because we don't experience things raw, do we? We filter them.
Always. Through our background, our culture, our expectations.
So someone religious might see an angel,
while someone else, maybe more scientifically minded, might interpret the same ambiguous light in the sky as an extraterrestrial craft.
Same core event, maybe, but totally different meaning attached.
Exactly. The interpretation is heavily colored by the pre-existing beliefs. Pasulka really emphasizes that interplay.
And another huge piece of this, which I found, well, frankly, kind of mind-bending, is the role of technology, specifically AI.
Yeah, she goes way beyond just thinking of AI as like a fancy telescope to find aliens.
Right. It's much deeper. She floats this idea of AI as a potential, what was the phrase? A language bridge.
A way to maybe communicate with intelligences that are just fundamentally different from us, operating on levels we can't currently grasp.
Like a universal translator, but for concepts, not just words.
Something like that. Which, of course, opens up huge questions about what communication even is at that level. Can AI truly bridge that gap?
It's a wild thought, but she takes it even further, doesn't she?
She does. There's this thread exploring whether AI itself could be or could become a form of non-human intelligence.
Not just a tool, but the intelligence itself.
Yeah. Or even, and this is where it gets really speculative, future humans or future AI reaching back.
Oh, okay. That definitely pushes the boundaries.
Really does. It blurs lines between us and our creations, past and future.
Yeah.
It's complex.
So stepping back a bit from this deep dive into encounters, what are the big takeaways? For me, it's this challenge to strict materialism.
Definitely. She's pointing towards a reality where technology, consciousness, and maybe even something spiritual or numinous, they all intersect.
They're not separate categories anymore.
Right. And a big part of that is how she validates the subjective experience. The experiencer accounts aren't just noise. They're potential signal.
They're pieces of the puzzle, even if we don't know how they fit yet. Yeah.
And remembering always how our own beliefs shape how we see those pieces.
That constant filtering process.
Yeah. And maybe the biggest thing, for me at least, is how she implicitly pushes us to just broaden the definition of NHI.
It's not just about ETs.
No. It could be AI, it could be interdimensional, it could be spiritual, it could be something we literally have no concept for yet.
It feels like she's subtly critiquing traditional ufology in a way, you know?
I think so too.
Yeah.
By bringing consciousness, spirituality, psychology, she's saying the purely technological or physical analysis might be missing huge parts of the picture.
You need a wider lens. The nuts and bolts approach isn't enough.
Especially given that high strangeness factor, the weird stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that makes no logical sense.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe the irrationality is the message in some way.
She doesn't give easy answers, that's for sure.
No, thankfully. It's more about providing new ways to think about the questions. And they are profound questions.
Absolutely. So wrapping up our thoughts on encounters, I'm kind of left chewing on this idea of what if the sheer weirdness of it all? What if that's the biggest clue? What if it's telling us that our current map of reality, it's just wildly incomplete?
We're still deep in Plato's cave, basically.
Yeah. And maybe the universe is far more interactive, more alive with intelligence in ways we just haven't grasped.
And perhaps technology, especially something like AI, isn't just changing our tools, but changing our capacity to perceive.
Or even interact with intelligences that were maybe always there, or just now emerging into our view.
It definitely reframes the whole conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what's next.